For MFA Incorporated, this is Tom Stever of Brownfield Ag News with Jason Weirich, MFA's Director of Agronomy. Jason, tell me about your work with MFA.
Well, with MFA, I'm in charge of our NutriTrack program. It's a program that we've had around since 1995, and it's a program based around intensively grid sampling our fields out there and making variable rate applications of fertilizer based off of the foundation principles of the 4 R's, and that being the right source, the right rate, the right time, and the right place, developed by the TFI, and being good stewardships of our nutrients that we have going out on our producers' fields. That's one of the areas that we're working on, intensively working on with our producers. Also work with our CropTrack program as well, which is our intensively scouted program where we're in our producers' fields once a week, making recommendations off of weeds, disease, insects, and making those recommendations for our producers off of our findings in their fields.
You mentioned the 4 R's. What is the importance of that?
Well, the 4 R's are very important from keeping our nutrients in the field where we put them. Nobody likes to see nutrient runoff or soil runoff of our fields. The producers are paying for those nutrients. They want to keep them out there. But also making sure that we're not misapplying or misusing our products that we're putting out there. You know, if we got a steep back grass terrace, we don't want to be putting a lot of nutrients out there on a highly erodible ground when we're fixing to have 7 inches of rain like they're talking coming up here in the next few days. So just being good stewards of the environment that we have, and like farmers, just getting the message out there of what we do.
You mentioned the lawsuit that's taking place with the Des Moines Water Works right now. So I would imagine that the 4 R's and what you talked about directly addresses those problems.
It addresses several of those problems there. We don't want to put out too much fertilizer in places we don't need it. We want to keep the soil, the capacity of that soil. We want to make sure that we're putting out nutrients out there that the soil can hold those nutrients in place with residue, the CEC, and the pH of those soils. Make sure we're keeping nutrients where they belong and where we want them.
The CropTrack program, what does that do specifically?
The CropTrack program, we work with our producers, develop specific herbicide programs before we go into the season, seed recommendations, but then also we got a scout that is out there in their field making patterns across their field, looking for pests, weeds, disease, insects, and then making herbicide or pesticide applications or recommendations based off of what we find in that field, how it's going to economically benefit that producer based off of thresholds. Instead of just applying herbicide XYZ or pesticide XYZ, we got a pointed person out there making those recommendations based off of what is actually in that field, and not just a blanket application.
Characterize how MFA has a personal connection with these producers in that regard.
When we go out there and we're walking these fields, we're making those recommendations, we get to know those farmers very, very well. We're not going to replace you as a farmer knowing those fields better than you, but I don't think we can find anybody that's going to know anything less than you as far as a scout. We're out there, we're making recommendations, we're talking to those guys once a week, we're talking to those guys about their yield potential, the things that are going on in those fields, and what we can do better for the next year, getting that game plan on how to increase yield and increase profit for those producers.
What are the metrics that you use? How does a producer know that this is doing some good?
Well, for an example, last week we found the first documented case in this year of rust in our wheat field. The producer was fixing to make a herbicide application across that field. He was enrolled in our CropTrack program. We found that we had rust out there. We was able to save him an application across that field by throwing a fungicide in there to control that rust was going across that field. Right there for that farmer, we paid for the CropTrack program just an application cost of an additional trip for a fungicide across that field, having early detection of those pests and getting out there before we have those economic threshold losses. So you can put a hard number on that. Just one instance on his wheat acres is going to pay for the CropTrack program as he goes forward on those acres.
As the weather is changing right now, what do you anticipate as far as the season coming up?
Well, so I see here today, I see a lot of nitrogen loss potential. If we look at the potential rainfall in the next few days, I want to make sure that we continue to be good stewards of our nitrogen programs. NBPT, Agritane, nitropyrin being Inserve and Instinct. Those are 2 proven products that we have on the market today that have been developed. Those 2 products there, one stops volatilization, the other one stops denitrification and leaching. Those are some products that we see helping as well. Our seed treatment side of things, if you start talking about seed production, it can change a whole aspect of things. If you start talking about seed treatments, disease, insects, we're coming out of a mild winter, we might see some increase in pest pressure. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this spring.